Good morning, everyone. Welcome to MandoLessons Live. I am your host, Baron Collins Hill, and I hope you're all having a great, Saturday? A great Saturday, whatever time of day it is for you. For me, it's 10 in the morning, so good morning. I'm already out of coffee, unfortunately, but so be it. Let's see what we got in the chat. All sorts of stuff already happening. We got Lindsay from BC, Jim from Georgia, Denise, happy Thanksgiving. Jim, if you come across, I got a question already, which I love to see. Happens to be Dorian or Minor. How do you find chords that match? That's a great question that we can jump into. Edward says, good morning, everyone. Robert from Massachusetts, Lewis from Indiana, Joe, SoCal checking in. Will from Michigan, Sherry from Vancouver Island. Yeah, you guys have been getting right up there. We've been dodging it. It's been a little wet in Portland, but yeah, it's been kind of nuts north of us. Geroid from Belfast, good to have you here. Sheldon from Minnesota. Alan, hello again. Good to have you as always. James from the other side of the pond, happy Thanksgiving. XD Light Sky, Robert, Tim, Aaron, all kind of folks. Uncle Bobby, Gary, James. I'm repeating people's names already, I can tell. Ursanos, Joe. I'm just repeating myself now. But great to have you all here. I'll look back through here and see if there's any questions. But if this is your first time, welcome. And the way this works is it's Q&A. So if you got questions, I can pretend to have answers. I'm happy to play some tunes and just have a good time. No question too simple, no question too advanced. It's just a good hour of hanging. So we had a question right off the bat from Jim. I just want to make sure I didn't miss any other questions before I jump right in. Bluebird's got some tips on making guitar stands hold your smaller instruments. It's a good little DIY hack. I like it. Oh, no. Edwards. Oh, yeah. So the tune I was just playing was Over the Waterfall. And however you like to do it, and however you do it is great. So no need to be depressed, Edward. And we'll play it at the end of the hour together, and not quite that crazy. I was hoping it wouldn't come out quite that crazy, but then it did. Sometimes you're just not in control. XD Light Sky says, where did you buy your tone guard? I've bought them from all over the place. So, talking about this little cage on the back that I recently did a video about. I've got one on every one of my instruments now. So there's the F-hole LS. I've got a custom one on whoa, that's kind of stuck. If I can get it out. Yeah. I've got a custom one on the mandola. They make mandola guards too on the 10-string Smart. So I think I bought my first one from, I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but from the Tone Guard website. And then I've bought them used from people who didn't want them anymore, and I've sold them, and then I've bought some more, and so I think this one, I think I bought used. I think the two currently that are on my oval and F-hole I bought used, but then I did buy a new one for the Smart Mandola because you don't come across the oval hole one, the mandola sized ones used. All right, so jumping right in to the questions. Let's see what we got. Jim says, if you come across a melody that happens to be in Dorian or minor, how do you find chords that match? It's really kind of genre specific. There's sort of trends and traditions that you find in tune. So like if you're talking about, so we're talking about modes here, and the mode itself will give you some sense of what chords are going to happen. So if we're in minor, if we're in Dorian, which is a kind of classic minor key, you hear a lot of Irish tunes in E Dorian because it's actually the same notes as D major. But you have, and that's a very common key for like a tin whistle or a flute or a set of pipes to be in Irish music. They're very traditional instruments, so a lot of tunes are kind of based around D. But if you take that D scale, and cover up all the holes, but you start and end on E notes, you get a minor sound, and that's E minor Dorian. And so you get this E minor as like your home key, but it's also, based around that D sound, so you also get a lot of D chords. So you don't tend to see a whole lot of like E minor, A minor, what would it be? E7. Oh, let's see, E minor. What was I talking about? E minor, A minor, B7, and then back to E minor. It happens so infrequently in Irish music that I can't even do it. So what you kind of end up with is a lot of 2-chord songs where you just have that E minor as your home chord, and then you also you're playing out of that key of the same notes as a D major scale, so you get a lot of D major chords as well. And you can kind of troubleshoot it yourself. Just think about the scale you're playing in, and take 1, 3, and 5 starting on, or take every other scale tone starting with your E. So you got, that's that E minor, that's what is that, F sharp minor, G major, A major, B minor, and then you don't really tend to run into C sharps, but you can do C sharp minor. When you get that D, and then you're back to E minor. So that can, if you go through that process, you can figure out like what chords are going to be there, and that's how you get, in E minor. If somebody says play along in E minor, and they don't specify what mode, you would think maybe like E minor, A minor, B7, back to E minor. It's classic kind of minor sound, but you have that A minor, but in Dorian you have a C sharp, which is not, an A minor has a C natural. Getting kind of into the weeds on theory here. Ultimately, if you're playing Irish and old time music and you have a Dorian tune, you're going to end up with like what I think of. David Benedict was just talking about this in his excellent live stream. You kind of end up with what I think of as like the home key. If somebody says in E minor, I'm going to call that my 1 chord. And then what's my next chord? D. So that's actually like a flat 7 major chord. Because the D natural, if you're in E major, you get a D sharp. But if you're in E Dorian or minor, you get a flat 7, that D natural. So that becomes your second chord, E minor and D. Maybe throw in an A or a G chord in there. But those are kind of the big 4 chords in those styles. And ultimately, it kind of depends on the style of music. The more you listen to a lot of like Irish music or a lot of old time music, you'll start to kind of hear those trends and say, okay, I'm hearing the same kind of chord progressions over and over, just like you would in bluegrass with like 1, 4, 5. The more you listen, the better sense you get. So that was a little bit scattered of an answer, but hopefully that helps. And then there's a question down here. I'm glad Sherry's staying dry with all the weather up north. Yeah, my brother's up north in Northwest Washington, and he also got a bunch of rain. Let's see, if I missed anything right at the beginning here, let me know. I can't quite keep up with all the stuff that's going on in the chat, and I don't want to sit here making y'all watch me listen to this tune in silence, or watch me read the comments in silence. James says, is your 10-string a Lawrence Smart? It is. He recently was on the Fretboard Journal and recently mentioned 10 strings. I thought his name sounded familiar. Yeah, so I actually got like an anonymous shout out because I'm having him build me some instruments. So that's actually what he was talking about on the Fretboard Journal podcast when he was. So there's a great interview with Lawrence, who built for anyone who hasn't seen this thing. This is my 10-string. I don't know how in tune it is right now. It's been a little while. Should be all right. Yeah, close enough. 10-string mandolin built by Lawrence Smart over in Idaho. And he's also building me some larger instruments, a tenor guitar, a 6-string guitar, and a mandocello version, a 10-string mandocello that's CGDAE. So that's Mandola land. Mandolin land. And he's got that low C string. So if you're listening to that podcast, James, that was a great interview. Courtney Hartman, who's an amazing guitar player and songwriter, and she plays one of Lawrence's archtop 6-string guitars. She did a great interview with Lawrence, and he was talking a little about some upcoming instruments that I have on order with him that he's starting to work on, and it makes me excited to start hearing about it. Play this thing for a while. Cool, glad you... I'm honored that you're here in your sleepy state, Ursanasi. I've been waking up at like 4 a.m. for some reason, like right on the dot. 4 a.m. I'm awake. I got to sleep through it this time, but it was iffy for a second there, but hope you can catch up at some point. Joe says, I heard a tip from a guitar teacher said you should be able to play your left hand and right hand separately. My brain, that's a good exercise. My brain requires my left fingers before I pick with my right hand. Any comments? I've never tried with the right hand, but we'll find out right here. I can do like... But then... Whoa! I can't do the right hand. One thing that I do like, you can get that sound if you put a capo like way up on the instrument, like it doesn't really matter, somewhere, and then you fret behind, you can hear all those open strings by going. Not a very interesting tune. So there's Fisher's hornpipe, just the right hand, with a capo in a weird spot. But yeah, I'm sure there's benefits. I think it's definitely good to be able to do your left hand, and if you can figure out how to do your right hand too, I would say knock yourself out, because that's definitely going to be a good exercise. If you can really focus on your right hand, that's going to be a huge benefit in whatever way you can trick your brain into doing it. Chip says, I've got a Washburn A-style made in China. Always sounded terrible. Would it be worth having it worked on? For $500, I paid for it. Oh, okay. Or just outright sell it for a different one. That's a good question. I mean, it depends on... At first I thought you were saying it was going to cost $500 of work. You can always bring it to someone and be like, look, I don't really like the sound of this thing. Or what, like it doesn't play well, whatever. And you can take it to a luthier you trust and be like, hey, what can you do for me here? I'm trying to figure out. And you just be upfront and be like, I don't know if I should sell this thing and get a different one, or if there's something you can do to make it sound better that doesn't cost that much money. And I feel like a lot of kind of chill luthiers will just let you know. Or, yeah, they'll repair folks will just be like, you'd be better off spending your money elsewhere. It's hard to say on my end from not knowing your instrument in particular, but there you go. Typing Hazard said, can I ask about tags? You sure can. I think of them as turnaround licks like in blues, but not sure if that's quite right. Also, there seems to be blessed tags like Tony Rice's outro tag on Salt Creek. I can't remember exactly what that one is off the top of my head, but yeah, they're very kind of, is idiomatic the right word? Tags, especially, you hear them mostly in bluegrass, At least that's the kind of music that I use them most in. They're not as much of a old time and Irish thing, but they can be, it can be anything from like the like little intro tags. In your song. And then maybe somewhere in the middle you got a little tag. And then the song keeps going. A little fill. And then you get to the end of the song. Whatever it may be. This thing's not quite in tune enough for me to want to play it right now. But yeah, they're just little like sounds that you hear. It's I don't know exactly how to describe them. They're just little musical phrases, often like one measure long, or could be even shorter, maybe a little longer. But I mean, it's the equivalent of like if you're doing "Happy Birthday." It's sort of like the "and many more" is the tag. It just kind of, it lets you know, it gives you it can either, like an intro tag can give you a little bit of like okay, here's this, it can be the equivalent of like, like four potatoes in more like kind of dance music. So sort of like, here's 4 beats to let you know what the tempo is, what the feel is of the tune, so you can start dancing right at the top. Or in Irish music, often they'll play like they'll play an A part to get everybody in like Irish set dancing. You'll get an extra A part at the beginning just to sort of get everybody understanding, and then the dance leader will kick into the tune on the second A, and then you play a third A, so you stay in the form of A A B B. They're just little reference points of like, it can be to get you ready, it can be, fill in a little space in the middle with a tag. It's just its own little self-contained, tag. Or it could be at the end of the tune to sort of like, happy birthday to you. It's just like, it's a way of saying like, we're done here. So that's my thoughts on tags. Hopefully that's helpful in some way. Yeah, definitely. Kenneth was talking about in G-Dad, or you can even do it in GDAE. Most of my chords that I end up playing, like, here's a D chord. It's just D, D, A, and I'm not playing the E string. That's a no third in the chord, so there's adding the third. There's a minor third, major third, no third. Could be major or a minor. And then you can get to the 5, 2, 2, open, open. G, open G string, and G on the D string. You can add the D on the A string if you want. Definitely think about those chords if that's going back to that kind of modal stuff. Yeah, a lot of the Irish stuff, it's fun. Especially in Irish music, I try to leave out a lot of thirds from my chords because often the melody is the instrument, or the instrument that's playing the melody is the instrument that is creating the sound of, or is telling the listener whether it's major or minor. So you don't really need to hammer home like, this is a major chord over a melody and it's just going to take up a lot of space while somebody's trying to play a tune. That's a little more in the way to my ears than if you're doing this and the melody's doing whatever it wants and it's having fun, versus the melody is doing whatever it wants, going up and down. It's a little more messy to my ears. So leaving the thirds out of chords is a nice way to be neutral about the whole thing and leave more space for the melodies. Swallowtail Jig is a classic example of E minor, D, E minor, D, think they offer you you can also throw in some A. You can throw in an A neutral and like A5 chord, whatever you want to call it, or a major chord in there. But yeah, Swallowtail is a classic E minor and D song. So Keith is saying E Dorian, you would use E minor, D5, and A5. Yep, you could do that, or you could make both of the D and the A major. Nice. Gary says, I love the weeds in music theory. Yeah, Rick Beato is amazing. Beato. Zombie Guitar, I'm not familiar with, but I'll have to check it out. I do want to do... Music theory is just such a broad concept. I think what you got to do sometimes is just like dive in, understand that you're not going to know what's going on, and just keep diving in every time, and eventually things will start to click. I do want to make a music theory series for kind of mandolin and folk music in particular, because there's not a lot of, like, especially in like kind of fiddle tune land, every style of music has its own music theory that it makes sense to have to know. Like, I studied a lot of classical music theory in college just because I wanted to take a music theory class. So I learned like classical piano music theory, but I didn't play classical music. I didn't play the piano. And then I would go back to my room and play fiddle tunes on the mandolin. Be like, well, that doesn't help me at all. But eventually little nuggets started clicking, and then so it'd be fun to put together a music theory series. Ooh, that's a mouthful. For folk mandolin. And that's the thing. Yeah, Will says, has got it right. He says, theory is awesome to discuss and absorb. That's the way to do it. You know, you just try to have conversations about it. Try to listen to people having conversations about music theory. And, you know, I listen to a lot of people talk about music theory where I just, like, I'm either don't understand what they're talking about, or I'm just in awe of their listening skills in their ears. This guy, Charles Cornell, amazing, kind of along the lines of Rick Beato or Adam Neely, both incredible musicians, and they can just hear something and pick it up and immediately dissect it and be like, okay, here's what's going on. And, oh, I like the ninth that they threw in there that kind of resolves to the flat 7 in the next chord, and I'm just like, whew, I sort of know what you're talking about, but not really. So just being in the same room or watching a video about somebody talk about music theory can be helpful, because it does get in there eventually. Nice. Yeah. Will says that capo technique sounds like the Edge from U2 playing mandolin. I like it. Cool. Yeah, I guess that there is a visual aspect to that capo trick too. Like, you can't get distracted by what's going on here. Like, it would be interesting to, like, I wonder if it would be helpful to, like, make a lesson where I'm doing this. I gotta make sure I'm not in the, like, you know. The thing's not that in tune either. It's just not a day for having an in tune mandolin. So yeah, maybe there's some kind of visual benefit for doing some videos where you can't see my left hand, because then you can't worry about what's going on there. And often people's first instinct is to look right at the left hand to get information on the melody. But if you can't see the left hand, you just got to look at the right hand. That's why a lot of times I'll, like, get my hand, if I'm doing right hand exercises, even if you can see my left hand, I'll either just do like this, or just take my hand off, whatever it may be. I like it. Gary, I think you're probably referring to the 10 string as the Death Star of mandolas. I like it. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Chip, definitely bring it into somebody that's got a good reputation. And I mean, it's kind of like taking your car to a car place. Hopefully, they can give you an estimate before they like. You don't want to get the call where they're like, okay, yep, I fixed it. It'll be $1,000. You want to be like, okay, well, you need new brake pads and this and that, and it'll cost ever how much, and you can then decide like, well, I got the car for $300, and it's not worth dumping too much money in it. James has a question about mics. Do you use mics when you play live, or do you use pickups? Maybe one or the other, depending on the situation. Also, any pedals or effects that you use. So is that right here? It is. I tend to play in smaller groups where we're not playing very loud. So I use these little clip-on mics. This one was made by Audio-Technica, but there's like DPA and there's other companies. It's just this little clip-on thing, and I can take it. Let's see if I can get this in view. So got a little mic on a gooseneck, lavalier mic, and then this little attachment mechanism. You just pop it on the instrument, cinch it down, and hey, look, you got yourself an amplified mandolin. Now, if you're like playing with a drummer and a bunch of trumpet players sitting right next to you and a bunch of electric guitars, and you're trying to keep up with an acoustic mandolin on the mic, that mic is gonna pick up everything that everybody else is doing, but and create feedback problems and bleed problems. So that's when you want to get into or if you're playing on like really enormous stages, then you're gonna be wanting to look into some kind of other pickup system. A lot of people will do those like K&K kind of spot piezo mics that go on the inside, or some people just attach them to the outside. Then you just get an end pin jack a lot of the times. I've had that on guitars, but I don't play. I've thought about it. Piezo mics have come a long way. I remember going to bluegrass festivals in the early 2000s even, and anybody who was just using a straight piezo didn't sound very good. And you can get preamps to kind of temper the sound and EQ it a little bit, but it always just sounded a little kind of thin and unnatural, not like the warm sound of the acoustic instrument. Whereas a mic is going to actually pick up the sound that is on the instrument. So usually I just use these. Sometimes if I'm playing like a bunch of different instruments, I've got these mics. Let's see. I've got a little, like right now I'm sitting in front of a shotgun mic. And if I'm switching a bunch of instruments, it doesn't make sense to either, line up, plug everyone in that way. So you just set up a mic on a stand, play into that. So that's mostly what I do. But if you're playing in larger situations or with really loud instruments, I'd say start with a clip-on mic. They're not wildly expensive. You can get them for like $100. Probably cheaper. You can probably find ones that sound pretty good for cheaper. I don't know. I just have a bunch of these Audio-Technica. There's the Pro 70. Don't even know what this one is. AT8542. That doesn't sound familiar. But there's like the AT35 and the Pro 70 and the 350. I just have a bunch of those, and I've never played in a large enough situation. Even I was playing in like jazz bands in college with horns and drummers, and rarely ran into situations where I was kind of the microphones weren't doing it for me. But if you're playing with a bunch of electric instruments, you may run into that. But try a mic first. I think that's a good way, and much easier way to get a nice clear sound. Because once you go piezo, the sound quality suffers. Although they've gotten a lot better, like I said. That's a little, you plug right in, or then you gotta maybe do some preamps or EQs or other pedals to kind of dial the sound in to make it sound more natural. Whereas a decent mic with good placement is gonna be a lot easier. Good evening from Norway, from AFA. I don't know if I'm saying your name correctly, but welcome. Thanks for joining us. James says, listening to an interview with Russ Barenberg, and he mentioned using a slight delay and reverb. Yeah, that's definitely something you can do. I tend to just play... So, if I get out of the way here, I got a big old pedal board right down there for all these electric instruments. But I haven't done a whole lot of affecting acoustic sounds all that much. Yep, that's so yeah, the A5 chord, also known as the power chord. Root and fifth. There's a lot of good music that just uses the root and fifth. Is there an easy technique for playing harmony with a melody? Ooh, that's a great question. That's another kind of huge topic because every style of music has its own style of harmony. Like you can listen to bluegrass that has its own style, and then you go listen to like some Bulgarian choirs, and they've got a totally different sense of harmony. Kind of depends. In general, kind of you know it when you hear it, which isn't very helpful. You can try to... I would say the best way to learn harmony is listen to music that's got two... I would say start with two voices, you know, if it's... So a great example for harmony and learning chords, what I do and recommend to a lot of people is Caleb Clotter and Reeb Wilms. Great musicians out here in the Pacific Northwest. Caleb's an amazing mandolin player. Reeb's a great guitar player and singer. Caleb also sings and plays fiddle and guitar. And they have some duo albums that it's just the two of them. Almost every song on the album is just 1, 4, and 5. And they sing melody and harmony. Real stripped down. There's not a lot of other instruments to kind of distract your ears. And it's great music, not only just to listen to, but, you know, just go through and say, can I figure out with every song, what key is it in? What time signature is it in? Can I find the chords 1, 4, 5 with or without an instrument? You know, you can just sit there and say, this sounds like the 1 chord. That sounds like the 4 chord. Oh, and then there's the 5 chord, and now we're back to 1. Great exercises for listening. And then in terms of harmony, you'll hear just those two voices. The more voices you add, the harder it is to kind of pick it apart. So start with 2 voices. Get those Caleb and Reeb albums. And just listen a lot. And then it's a lot easier than saying like, well, okay, here's how harmony works. First you have to know how to build a major scale from music theory, and then you can take the third note, or a note a third above every other note, but also still, you know, you get into music theory and you're not making music, you're just like trying to math your way into understanding harmony. I think it's much easier and much more fun and much more beneficial just to try to listen to some records, try to sing the melody line, and then try to sing the harmony line, or play the melody and play the harmony line. And then, you know, starting out with songs is one thing, and then fiddle tunes are just kind of really complicated songs that are sometimes less singable, but, you know, it's one thing to harmonize with like so that's like a third, my voice is singing a third above harmony. And if that was like the melody of a song, that's great. But once you get to like... you'd be singing like... I can't do it. Hard to sing, way out of my range, but you know, that gets a lot more complicated. So start with song melodies, find some really simple music to listen to, start identifying things you're hearing. Great question. Will says strip chords, I don't know what that is a great idea and suggestion by eliminating the third. Okay. Oh, so like maybe stripping chords of their third? is the balance between percussiveness and establishing the beat versus complementing, not covering the melody. I agree. Yeah, yeah. And then throw, get used to all your power chords, your 5 chords, whatever you want to call them, chords without a third, and then learn to sprinkle a third back in, or put it in a different inversion like you're talking about in the chord. Cool, Gary. I'm glad there's interest in music theory for mandolin. Yeah, and that's the thing. So Gail's saying Chris Thile plays complicated harmonies instinctively, and I think that's a lot of you can go about things so many different ways. Like I think a lot of it for me is instinctive. Like you start out with like listening to music and like trying to dial in and like match the harmony that you're hearing. And then you learn, okay, that's what that sounds like. And then maybe you can put it into practice while playing. And then it's sort of like, the melody changes a little bit. So you're not going, da, 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 da. So the melody might be doing what it is, and you just have a kind of instinctive sense of, okay, I'm going to sing this note when the melody is on this note. And then, Chris Thile's been playing mandolin for a long time and been making up harmonies for a long time. So things can get more complicated. So in general, I can kind of instinctively create harmonies for tunes. But, even Noah Fishman, who's a bandmate of mine, he's done some lessons on the channel. We have a duo album called Fine Times. And, he's got a much quicker ear. He's much more kind of trained musician than I am. And he can, I can come up with something like a harmony for Bill Cheatham. It's like, I could do that. It would sound okay. I might do it on the fly, but I don't know if I would sit down and be like, yeah, I'm just going to play that on a recording. I would try to work something out a little bit better, but Noah has a much better ear, and Chris Thile has a much better ear for really building beautiful harmonies kind of on the spot and doing it intuitively. But the more you do it, the more intuitive it becomes. Joy from Georgia, good to have you here. Got a new octave mandolin last week, very fun. Do I ever post videos on the octave mandolin? Not really. Everything that I do on the mandolin is transferable to the octave mandolin, except for, you're not going to do this chop chord on an octave mandolin unless you've got incredible hands. And the only difference really is the string spacing, the fingering of kind of how you approach scales. So on a mandolin, but on a larger instrument, it's got a longer scale, so you need to you got to use kind of you put your pinky on the 5th fret instead of, you don't do this on an octave mandolin. Again, some people do if they have really large hands, but I have fairly large hands, and I still, if the instrument's scale length is 23 inches, like most octave mandolins, I go kind of to guitar fingering. So, open, first finger gets the 2nd fret, skip your middle finger. It's kind of 1 fret per finger. That's the way, that's really the biggest difference. And then everything that I'm doing on the mandolin, you can do on an octave mandolin. And you might, you'll run into things where it's like, whoa, I can't make that stretch. How do I do that? And you'll have to do things. But I would say just, get your fingering in order on your left hand, and then it'll all come together. Just try out mandolin lessons. It's the same tuning, so. And you'll find strengths for the octave mandolin. Like, I love playing slower stuff because the octave mandolin's got some more sustain. It's a lower, deeper, kind of prettier sound in some ways. Yeah. All right, Betsy, good to have you here. Better late than never, as always. You got it. Will says, I really like when Baron plays jigs, so natural. I need to latch on to a more of a basic jig or to learn, or two to, latch on to a more basic jig or two to learn, expanding beyond bluegrass. Any suggestions? Oh, let's see, jigs. Swallowtail jig is a great one. The thing about kind of getting natural with jigs coming from bluegrass, and I went down this same trajectory myself. You got to get your right hand into this pattern of down, up, down, 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 down, up. Because it puts all the stresses in their natural spot. Whereas if I go down, up, in bluegrass there aren't jigs, so your hand is pretty much always doing down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, and that becomes you get these kind of spots where an upbeat should be a strong accent, but kind of your downstrokes are always naturally going to be a little more, a little stronger of a pick. So getting your down, up, down, I've got lessons on the website, pick direction for jigs. If you can get that under your fingers, that's going to be really helpful in getting that kind of natural, smooth sound. That said, don't let your lack of understanding of proper pick direction for jigs, don't let that stop you from playing music. Like, don't let that stop you from learning jigs. I learned a bunch of jigs doing down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And then I was like, man, I don't have the feel for it. Like, I don't sound natural. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel comfortable. And once you get to that point, then if you can start out, like, at least with that idea of down, up, down, down, up, down in your mind, see if you can get it into your hand. And then once you get it, it's just there. Just like down, up, down, up, down, up is. And I just never had heard of down, up, down, down, up, down. I'm self-taught and had no idea. And then I think a friend clued me into it, or I kind of stumbled upon it and was like, whoa, okay. I got to like relearn my entire right hand for jigs, but made it work. It'll all kind of come along, and it's better to play jigs with improper pick direction than not play jigs at all. Lewis says, I watch right hand technique more than left. Nice, that's good. To me, the music comes from the right hand. I would agree on a lot of that. The clip-on mic requires a PA, correct? A guitar amp wouldn't work well for it. It depends. You can get little, so this is an XLR, which is more of like something that you'd plug into a mixer. You can get XLR 2/4 inch adapters, just like a little, XLR female on this end to 1/4 inch male on this end. And then you can go right into a guitar amp. I don't know if that's like advisable. I did it in college. I didn't really know any better. I don't know if it's like what you're supposed to do. But I did it. And it worked pretty well. It's been a little while since I did that. But yeah, so a lot of the stuff that comes out of, if you play electric guitar and have an amp, you could either try to get that XLR to 1/4 inch adapter, or if you do have a piezo pickup, then you can do the 1/4 inch right into the guitar. Lots of different options there. All right, thank you, Joe, for the coffee fund. You must have heard that I was out of coffee right at the beginning of this, so gotta thank you for filling up the cup later on. And the same to Robert for the super chat, and Uncle Bobby. Oh, I'm so far behind in the chat. I'm gonna have to do like a lightning. There's been all these great questions. All right, going into the lightning round, and then we're gonna play Over the Waterfall. This is awesome. I love all these questions. I'm sorry I'm not gonna be able to get to them all today. Thank you all for the super chats. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. Edward, Uncle Bobby, Robert, and Joe, thank you so much. I appreciate it. There's a bunch of different ways you can support me. If that's of interest, you can do a super chat. There's links in the description to a PayPal, simple kind of PayPal donation that you can do one time or monthly, or if you can join us on Patreon. There's a bunch of patrons in the chat. We do our own patron-only live streams once a month as well, which will come up the weekend after Thanksgiving to patrons. But it's not too late to jump in on that if you want to. I get to dive a little deeper into questions, or at least answer all the questions. I feel like I've been diving in deep here, but I'm not going to get to all the questions. And now I'm real lost in the chat. Excuse me while I figure it all out here. Oh, nice! Uncle Bobby just saw Caleb and Reeb on Thursday. Yeah, they're down in California. That's right. Trying to get the tune count up this week. Working on Gallopede, Irish Washerwoman, and Yarmouth Reel. All right. Lewis is cracking jokes. Yarmouth Reel and Gallopede are the same tune, and it was a cause of great confusion for me for about a year. I got to do some lessons on Gallopede because I had so much. Lewis was in the. I did a workshop for Mandolin Cafe for Maine Fiddle Camp, not Mandolin Cafe, last weekend, which is why there wasn't a live stream. And had a great time teaching Gallopede. There's so much in that tune. I feel like you could just take that tune and spend like a year learning all of the ways to do different things with it. I'm going to do some more lessons on Gallopede. So if you want to follow along with those, go to my website and learn Gallopede, and you'll be ready for the Gallopede extended lessons whenever I make those. Did you ever experience plateauing on the mandolin as an intermediate player? Absolutely. How do you move beyond the rut and become a better player, especially in learning how to experiment and improvise? A huge question, a great question. I feel like I'm in a constant state of plateaus. I don't think I've moved beyond plateaus. You do definitely have that beginning, like, okay, I've never played an instrument, to like, all right, 30 minutes in and I know 3 chords and how to play a G scale. I'm making great progress. And then you learn, 4 scales and a half dozen chords, and you're like, great, now I've got that. What do I do next? You learn some tunes, and things start to kind of slow down in the learning process. I think the thing to do is just try to stay as excited as possible about what you're playing. For me, and it's hard to say this like now, but like getting out and playing with other people, hearing tunes that I haven't heard before. So a lot of times now that's just recordings or going to online events and just kind of listening and being like, oh yeah, I like that tune. Oh, let me try to learn that one. You can up your tune count, as Lewis is talking about. And whatever you can do to just like keep playing. If you keep playing, you can't get any worse. You might hit plateaus. You will hit plateaus unless you're some sort of superhuman musician. But just keep playing through the plateau and they end eventually. So if you can just pick up the instrument regularly and keep going, that's the best thing to do. A friend suggested getting a mute bar so I can practice late at night. Is that even a thing? Probably. Something you can do. I don't have anything soft right now, but you can kind of rig up soft stuff on the instrument and just kind of like... If you put something soft, it's not a great... if you need to play late at night and that's like the way to do it, it's not very like musically enjoyable to me to mute the instrument, but you can figure out ways to do it. Or, build a blanket fort in a closet and then go play in there. Cloth, yep. Yep, without a pick. Or you can use, they make felt picks, like a really soft material pick. Those are also a lot quieter than your normal pick. Maybe a combination of all these things. Kenneth's got a good point. Another way to get better, spend lots of time with other musicians. Circle jams are great. You get better. Yeah, I love being in a situation where I am not the best musician in the room, because that's the best way. If you're always comfortable in the musical situations you're in, and you're like, yep, I know all the tunes, I know this, I know that, then you're not going to learn as much. I love being somewhere where I'm like, whoa, like playing with Noah is like, oh man, he really he knows a lot of stuff that I don't know. That's why I love playing with him, because it makes me become a better musician. It puts me out of my comfort zone, and I learn a lot in the process. Yep, you can sing a drone note. There's also, I've made a lesson on, there's a great album called Cello Drone, or it's called Musician's Practice Partner, Cello Drones, and it's just a long drone, and the album is 12 tracks. Each one's like 5 minutes long of just every note. So there's like a G drone track, and having a drone is a great way to be able to experiment with that. Your instrument is now the second voice, and you can start to hear those intervals and what sounds good. Great suggestion from Ruth. It's often just also fun to play with drones. All right, Gail is asking Santa for an octave mandolin. I hope he pulls through on that. Plenty power, sounds great in the octave mandolin. Yeah, a lot of that O'Carolyn stuff and the slower stuff. Very fun. Rob says, please do Salt Creek for me and Boris here in the UK. I can do a little Salt Creek. Is this it? I think it is. Salt Creek, great tune. Alright, sorry I can't get to all of this stuff, but I'm gonna breeze through these last questions as quick as I can. Some great talk about Clifford Brown, amazing jazz musician. Flowers of Edinburgh or Banish Misfortune next. But they're both good. Probably whatever you do, then you learn the next one after that. If you want me to make a random suggestion, how about Banish Misfortune? But ultimately, do whatever you want. Stuff between string and mandolin. Plateau is a state of mind. Learn new scales, learn a new tune, try to play faster. All good information. Record yourself to evaluate your own progress. That is also true. Alright, I'm getting to the end here. I find it helpful to play by ear and try learning chords or notes for a tune. Yep, it's hard though, but at least for a beginner like me, but hopefully it helps. I like improvising, but suck at that. I mean, it's an interesting line between, like playing along with a recording, playing by ear, trying to... You kind of are improvising, in a way. Like, because you're just kind of messing around on the instrument and trying to find things that sound good. At first, you're doing that just to try to play what other people are playing, but then, once you know what other people are playing, you're still just kind of like taking the tune for a walk and seeing what comes out. It's kind of all related. Oh yeah, there's also, you can find those drone tracks on YouTube as well. Nice. Oh yeah. Oh no, yeah, so Noah is also teaching. Is he doing it this next month? Oh cool. So yeah, I think Glenn, another great mandolin playing buddy, is doing December, and then Noah is doing January and February. Maybe then Glenn again in March, and then I'm doing April. I can't remember, but mainfiddlecamp.com for all those mandolin workshops for Fiddle Camp. All right. Time to play a little Over the Waterfall and call it a day. Thank you all. Sorry I had to kind of rush through the stuff at the end there, but maybe join us on Patreon and things are a lot more chill over there. What tune are we playing? It's not in A, it's in D. So here we go. I'll play the melody first. You play the chords. It's in the key of D. It's got a trick little C major chord in there. And then I'll play the melody first. You play the chords. Then I'll play the chords while you play the melody. 1, 2, 3. I'm playing the tune again. You keep playing chords, I'll let you do it in a second. It's spaced out. We're trying to play a harmony line. You go for it. B part. Take it again. Everybody play the melody. Thanks everybody for playing along on that. Had a question from Rob, how to support me. There's some links in the description of this video. There's PayPal. You can send a quick donation that way. You can join us on Patreon and get access to lessons early, some other patron perks, patron only live streams, things like that. Or there's the super chat functionality, which unfortunately right now is about to go away because I gotta sign off. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I will see you all again soon. Bye-bye. Whoops, wrong button.